Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another one of our live shows. This is your boy Rolando, and you are in tune to XY Spark, where we believe the key to restoring happier families is to restore healthy masculinity. We're so glad that you will continue to be a part of the XY Spark family. And this evening, we want to share with you a particular message that is going to be looking at post traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. What exactly is PTSD and what are the signs? If you're just joining us, we want to welcome you to our podcast this evening. And we do hope that you will stay with us to the end. If you have questions, if you have a friend who you might want to just reach out to them and say, hey, XY Spark is on, you can do so. We want to also remind you that this coming Saturday, our special guest will be Dr. Courtney Duque. Dr. Courtney Duque will be our special guest this coming Saturday, and we will be looking at biblical meditation and healing the brain from psychological disorders. How biblical meditation can heal the brain from psychological disorders. You cannot afford to miss this guest. Dr. Duque has done extensive research, and he has even a particular book that he has published on the way that we can heal our brains through meditation and spiritual exercises. And so we do hope that you'll join us so that you can tell your friends and be here. Our time for that podcast this coming Saturday will be 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. That's 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And so tonight, we hope that you'll stay with us as we go through this very interesting topic, how to identify the signs of post traumatic stress disorder. Don't go away. We will be right back.
Grief and loss, trauma, mental health, alcohol and drug use, gender roles, anger management, self-esteem, sexual abuse, domestic violence, and the pressures of societal norms are real-life issues that affect men. Join Rolando, psychotherapist, author, life coach, and motivational speaker that has dedicated his profession to working with men to find a healthier alternative to cope and handle these stressors. Rolando believes that men are lacking in social, psychological, emotional, and spiritual support that is necessary for a lifestyle that promotes healthy masculinity. We invite you to join us on XY Spark, where we discuss issues that men face. At XY Spark, we believe the key for happier families is restoring healthy masculinity.
Thank you so much. And so this evening, we wanted to speak with you again about post traumatic stress disorder and what are the signs and symptoms and how do we identify that. We continue to have our discussion continues to be grounded in the work of Dr. Charles L. Whitfield. Our discussion continues to be grounded in the work of Dr. Charles L. Whitfield, who wrote this beautiful book, Healing the Child Within. And so we are going to be having a discussion that's generated from this beautiful manuscript written by Dr. Whitfield a number of years ago, but is still applicable within the field of psychotherapy. And so the first piece that we wanted to talk about this evening is to recognize that post traumatic stress disorder or PTSD may occur across the spectrum of manifestations from here are the things from fear or anxiety to depression to easy irritability to impulsive or even explosive behavior and numbness. So here are the things. We want to reiterate the things. The range of post traumatic stress disorder or PTSD ranges from the following. Number one, from fear or anxiety to depression to easy irritability to impulsive or even explosive behavior or numbness. And so all these things are some of the side effects from someone who is being impacted by PTSD. We want to recognize that there are several things and several stressors that can add to PTSD. The stressors include things like the following: They may be things like assault or rape, other sexual abuse, serious physical injury, torture, concentration camp experience, floods, earthquakes, military combat, and all those things that are similar. And so all of us are being challenged to ask ourselves, could it be that the behaviors that I'm displaying in my life now is as a result of some post traumatic stress disorder? As you listen to the categories that were just named, can you relate to being exposed to any of these? Physical injury? Can you relate to being exposed to floods or earthquakes? Can you relate to being to experiencing any form of sexual abuse or assault or rape? All those things are breathing ground for post traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. As we're growing up or living in a seriously troubled or dysfunctional family or similar environment, often we get into spaces where we are affected or impacted by PTSD. It's important to understand that PTSD is more damaging and more difficult to treat if the following things are there. Number one, if the traumas occur over a period of time. For example, if the trauma occurred longer than 6 months, it's harder for that PTSD to be treated. Number two, if the trauma are of human origin, it's harder to be treated. And number three, those around the affected person tend to deny the existence of the stressor or the stress. All these three things are present in an actively alcoholic family rather, and in similar troubled families. So what the author is alluding to here is there are several families where the three categories that were highlighted are quite normal, quote unquote. It's secretive. The person that has violated the other person, they're still around. It could be a young child. It could have happened to you when you were a young man by someone close to the family, and it happened for a long period of time. And now you're wondering, why is it that your intimate relationships are you're so unstable, why you're so uncertain about your sexuality, why you struggle to connect with members of the opposite sex. You find it really difficult, you doubt yourself, you struggle, you are not recognizing that there is something related to post traumatic stress disorder that you have not been paying attention to. And so we want to seek to see if we can have a discussion around how do we deal with that. Oftentimes what happens is that we re-experience the trauma. We re-experience the trauma. And the thing is, the second condition or manifestation is the re-experiencing of the trauma. How does that happen? How does that happen? That happens when uh, things like we have nightmares. Okay, this may be a history of recurrent and intrusive recollections of the trauma. Okay, people who have recurrent bad dreams, people who have nightmares, people who have sudden symptoms of re-experiencing trauma, often with rapid heart rate, panic, and sweating. And so if we find that these things are happening to us, we're struggling to get good sleep at night, we're sweating, we're panicking, sometimes those are repercussions of trauma. And so we want to really take a step back and seek to connect and find out
grief and loss,
if we
trauma,
are
mental health.
struggling with the trauma. We want to take a step back and examine and see and ask ourselves, could it be that I am a product of post traumatic stress disorder? And if I am a product of post traumatic stress disorder, what do I need to do in order to overcome that? And so we really want to examine ourselves. We want to ask ourselves, is this something that I can relate to? As you're listening to this podcast today, or this evening, or this morning, whatever time zone you are on, wherever you're located in the world, can you relate to any of these symptoms? Are you someone that is struggling? Are you having recurrent bad dreams? Are you experiencing nightmares? Do you have sudden symptoms where you are often having rapid heart rate, panic, and sweating? If these things are happening, it could be that you need to get some support to deal with the post traumatic stress disorder, because sometimes those things are a sign of PTSD. Some of us, we experience what is called a psychic numbing, a psychic numbing. And that psychic numbing, sometimes it impacts us. The psychic numbing, believe it or not, happens in moments of extreme stress. When for example, when combat soldiers, for example, are often called upon to act regardless of how they are feeling. Their survival depends upon their ability to suspend feelings in favor of taking steps to ensure their safety. Unfortunately, and catch this, the resulting split between oneself and one's experience does not heal easily. This is why sometimes we have our veterans who they really are struggling with that PTSD, because it doesn't matter how they are feeling, when duty calls, they have to ignore those feelings. And it does not gradually disappear with the passage of time. And so, what has happened to us similarly to the example that I just read about combat soldiers, we too have learned over time to have this psychic numbing. So we ignore the way we're feeling and we go ahead. It does not gradually disappear until an active process of healing takes place. The individual continues to experience what is called a constriction of feelings, a decreased ability to recognize which feelings are present, and a persistent sense of being cut off from one's surroundings. And so that is what we call a depersonalization. And so it's as if all of a sudden we are no longer aware or connected to what those feelings are. We are now numb. And when we get into that space, the work and the healing and the recovery from that is so much more challenging. But there are some other symptoms that that's accompanied with having PTSD. Other symptoms are hyper alertness, hyper alertness, or what we call hypervigilance. And we know, and we if we are paying attention, we may be familiar with many persons who live their lives that way. They're so affected, they're fearful about continuous stress. They're constantly on guard, constantly watching, constantly have their guards up. Other symptoms is what you call the survivor guilt. This is a guilt that is felt after escaping or avoiding some of the trauma when others are still in the trauma. So you can be affected from PTSD if you were in a family where you were both being abused and you might have been older, and all of a sudden you get an opportunity to get out. You got out, but you know that you have siblings who are left behind, and they are still in the situation where they are experiencing the trauma. And so as you leave, you have this survivor's guilt, and you are continuing to live your life even like that today because you're still feeling that it was your responsibility to rescue them. So you have survivor's guilt, and that is also some of the symptoms of PTSD. While survivor guilt is said to lead to the feeling that the survivor has betrayed or abandoned others, and often then it says, listen to this, it often leads to what is called chronic depression. So the survivor guilt can lead to a chronic depressed mood. And sometimes it's important for us to recognize that and do the work that we need to do to recover from that. Chronic depression is one of those big pieces. Another symptom may be what we call avoiding activities associated with the trauma. So, any activity that reminds us of that trauma, we avoid it. We stay away from it. We don't go anywhere near to it. And then there's a symptom that is called sometimes persons they struggle with multiple personalities. Do you know anyone like that? Those things are signs of post-traumatic stress disorder. Okay. Many persons who experience these different personalities is because, believe it or not, they come from highly troubled, stressed, or dysfunctional families. And so they take on different roles in order to fit in order to feel good about themselves. So, sometimes things happen in persons' lives because of their situation. So, situational stresses sometimes lead to post traumatic stress. Multiple personalities are often offshoots of a false self that is driven in part by the emergencies or the energies of the true self to express itself to survive. And so people do it because, hey, they're like, I need to do this. If I'm going to survive, I need to be this person. I need to be that person. And all of a sudden, um, people lose themselves. They're not sure who they are anymore. So on any given day, they can be two persons or three persons because they are working really hard to fit into the environment that they're a part of in order to feel good about themselves. And so we want to recognize that and we want to work on that. It's pointed out here that uh, an adult child of an alcoholic family, or other similar combinations in unhealthy families sometimes leads to a combination of PTSD and codependency. Remember, we talked about codependency in a previous episode, and we spoke about what that is and how we can see that. And we want to recognize it. Okay. PTSD and codependency are likely to be part of many troubled and dysfunctional families. So the codependency, when you're in a codependent relationship, when you're there and you feel like it's your responsibility to meet everybody else's needs and you're working hard and you're trying your best to make sure that everyone else is okay, and you don't even care about yourself at all, and nobody's trying to meet your needs or make you happy, it can be right there in the realm of being a codependent relationship. So we want to recognize that and we want to watch that. Treatment of PTSD consists of long-term group therapy with others who suffer from the condition, and usually as needed short-term individual counseling. So this is what the recommendation that Whitfield is making here, that I would want us to pay attention to. We want to pay attention to getting into group therapy with others who are experiencing the same condition and getting a shorter term individual counseling. It's important for us to note that post traumatic stress disorder is something that is very, very, very prevalent right around us. Sometimes we are struggling with post traumatic stress disorder, and we are not even aware that that is what we are experiencing. So we're hoping that this evening our presentation will help you to be more mindful of what those signs are. Okay, it's important for you to find a space and find a therapist that you connect with, that you feel that there's a compatibility, that you feel there's a therapeutic alliance, someone who you are comfortable enough to work through those struggles with. Don't just settle for anybody. Don't just say you're going to go to anybody. You have to find a good fit so that you can do the work, you can process this, and you can receive the recovery and the healing that you go in search of. It's very important that as you decide that you're going to come out of your quote unquote comfort zone, or as you're going to come out of your trauma, it's very important that you find someone who you can connect with, who understands what trauma is and can work with you in order to point you on the path to recovery, healing, and restoration from PTSD. And all of those things are important. So I just want to encourage you, okay, that as you think about this topic this evening, as you reflect on the discussion, I want to encourage you to just go back and take a deeper look at your own experience and see how or what rather you can do if you can relate to being uh, to displaying any of the characteristics that were mentioned in our presentation this evening. Remember, it's important to take responsibility for your own healing. Your destiny is your decision. Your goal and your willingness to allow yourself to be exposed to therapy is your decision. Your ability to heal and recover is your decision. You have got to start being a lot more honest and open with yourself. You've got to start asking yourself practical questions, and you've got to allow yourself now to get into a safe space where you can start relieving yourself of any form of stress, any form of depression, any form of hypervigilance or depersonalization that you have been practicing in your life. You have to take the initiative now to break that cycle. And so this evening, guys, I just want to continue to encourage you that here at XY Spark, we are excited that you continue to join us for our live shows. We want to reiterate that this coming Saturday evening, we'll be having a special guest in the form of Dr. Courtney Dookie, who will be coming on and speaking to us about a very interesting topic: how we can heal the brain from psychological disorders through biblical meditation. I do look forward to having you here again this coming Saturday night at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. If you're in the Eastern region, that will be about 10 p.m. your time. And if you're in Pacific time zone, it's going to be around about 7 p.m. your time. We do look forward to having you. And once again, we continue to say, we love you and we want you to continue to keep safe until we meet again. This is your boy Rolando on XY Spark. You have a great day, and we will see you again real soon.
Please join Rolando next time on XY Spark as he engages us in practical discussions that promotes healthy masculinity and challenge men to live extraordinary lives. At XY Spark, we believe the key for happier families is restoring healthy masculinity.